Hello. I got something a little bit different today. This is my Schumacher Cougar Classic, which is a re-release of the original Cougar. I knew absolutely nothing about Schumacher cars. Like, I had no experience of them at all, like through my childhood. I'd just never heard of them. They just never sort of had the reach to, where I was at. It was all Tamiya with a little bit of Kyosho thrown in. But yeah, mostly Tamiya. That was the price bracket that me and my friends could afford. Anyway, I decided to give a Schumacher kit a go, and I like the look of the Cougar Classic. I do, I guess I have a preference for the two-wheel drive models of any brand. I don't know, I just like the look of the two-wheel drive buggies. So I decided to go with this. I think the price of these buggies is really competitive. Like, it'll vary, from where you're based. Prices will vary, but just as an example, if I just go on eBay for a sec. Yeah, the prices sort of vary from around, the lowest I saw was 180 for a private seller, still a brand new kit, new in box, to about 230 for a vendor. I think I picked this one up for just about 200. I've got a couple of extra parts which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I think that's, any kit, RC kit, particularly one as race bred as Schumacher, for under £200. I'm not sure, I might have said dollars earlier, but anything under £200 is a pretty, I think, a really sharp price for the quality of this kit. And building this kit is something I want to talk about as well, because it's quite a different experience, and quite an enjoyable experience. But yeah, just to have a quick look over the car, is the first thing you'll probably notice is the shell's not painted, and it's a bit dusty. The reason the shell's not painted is because I want to paint it up like I just had to look up the name to make sure I get it right. It's the Cat Classic. So it's like a re-release of the Cat, and it's got a multicolored paint scheme with sort of green, quite a fluoro green, purple and black, and I thought that scheme would look really good on this car. The original theme on this one is kind of hard to sort of wrap your head around, really. Well, I think so anyway. I'm not even really sure how I would attempt at masking that up. So I thought, yeah, I'll just go for the Pro Cat color scheme, but it's going to take quite at least 3 to 4 different paints, and I don't have the money for that right now. So what I thought I would do is just hold off painting the body until I can get my hands on the paint. So that's why it's unpainted. But yeah, just to give you a little tour of the car. Nice big shock absorbers, quite cool wheels. I really like the spiky tread on these. It's it's an old school sort of buggy look with the big spiky tyres, which is what I like. Speaking of the shocks and the wheels, I don't know if it's excuse me, I don't know if it's just me, but the scale, the one thing that sprung to my mind is it really 1/10 scale, because these shocks are a lot bigger than, say, Kyosho or any of the others, and I think the height of the rims is also they're a lot larger on this. The whole buggy looks physically a smidge larger than the some of the vintage ones that I've got. So yeah, but the quality is really good. Plastics are really nice. You can see there the all the adjustment on the turnbuckles. This one I went for the carbon fiber uprights, front and rear. Unfortunately, you can't really see them too well on this buggy, so it's a little bit of a shame that they're not more visible, but anyway, that's what they are. Around the back here, we've got the sort of telescopic drive shafts. Interestingly, it doesn't tell you to grease them, so I haven't greased them, but you would think, you know, plastic sliding inside another plastic part like that might benefit from some grease. So you've got the transmission in the back here. It's a very simple transmission. It uses a couple of belts. So apart from the pinion gear to the main gear, there's no grease, because it's just purely belt driven in there, which I thought was kind of cool. It's usually I'm used to seeing, you know, belts to transfer power from front to rear, so it's a bit of a novelty. Yeah, doing it in a trans. I'll take the shell off and we can have a look inside there. Now the shell actually, the kit comes with some Velcro, and you're supposed to run Velcro along here to secure the shell, but as this is a shelf queen, I haven't bothered. With it inserting between the shock towers, sitting on here, and it sits really nicely at the back on this section here, so the shell does stay in place really well. It's quite easy to cut out too. The only difficulty is trying to get a sort of straight line along the bottom of it. That's the only challenge really in the shell. Maybe, you know, cutting these sections here out, but yeah. So yeah, it doesn't really need clips at all. If you're racing, yep, probably do the Velcro, but I'm not, so it's all good. One of the things I like about this car the most is this chassis. It's a lovely piece of aluminium, and it's sort of stamped, and it might look or seem flimsy, but it's really strong. And the reason for that is because it's pressed, so these sides actually add rigidity to the whole thing. So I'll show you what it looks like underneath. Nice countersunk screw holes, and of course this car's never going to be used, so it's all beautiful and shiny under there. The battery hold down, I've just assembled it as per the kit. Yeah, it's never going to see a battery, so there's different layouts you can do, but it's never going to see a battery, so that's just the one I went with. You may get a slightly better look at the carbon here, maybe not. And I've just put one of the typical sort of eBay servos in. Nothing too fancy, sort of 14, 15 pounds to buy one of these servos, and I've just stuck with the kind of the wacky servo horn that they give you in the kit. So yeah, there's a few things in the kit that are kind of quite unusual, I guess, compared to other RC cars. I've got the manual here, so I thought I'd just go through a couple of them. If you're someone that has worked on real cars, or is quite handy with RC cars, you're going to have no issues assembling this kit. Now, this is the first kit I've built since childhood, and I had no problems with it whatsoever. But on saying that, I wouldn't recommend it as a first kit car to build. I would start with something a bit simpler, because it's definitely got a few little challenging aspects that I would consider sort of more intermediate, requiring intermediate skills. So just before we get on to the some of those quirks that I was going to talk about, I just realized I haven't filmed the motor. So this is, well, you can't see it very well. What we've got in here is one of these Team Orion Element 19 turn motor. Sorry, I was just trying to read it to make sure it did say Element. Yeah, so that's what I've got in there. And the only reason I've got this in here is I brought a couple of motors off eBay that were sort of around the £20 mark for a brand new motor. And it's really just for display purposes. The other one I put in another one of my cars, but for some reason I felt like the green kind of worked with this one, seeing as the front part of the body is going to be painted green. I thought that might sort of tie in with the motor, so that's why I went with the green in there. So I'll just open the lovely instruction booklet here that comes with these cars. The instructions are really good, by the way, and also the major thing with building this kit that you'll find different to other cars, or other brands I should say, is that for each step, all the bags for that step come in one bag. So if you open bag A, there's a bag for step 1, and it has the 4 E-clips and the 6 washers, and everything you need for this step. And then you go to step 2, and it's another bag, and it's got all the parts you need for this step. So it's quite a different way of doing it. It's kind of nice. You're never hunting for parts. They're all in a bag for that step. The only downside I found is that I ended up with a massive pile of plastic bags at the end of it, which they went in the recycling, but I don't know if they're recyclable in all honesty. So yeah, here's a good example of a quirk. I tell you what, if I see another one of these Cougar Classics for sale and it's a good price, I'd actually consider buying another one to do sort of a hop-up version of it. So I'd like to build one with a carbon chassis and the big bore Schumacher shocks, and maybe the large front towers like the Cougar 2, just a real hotted up version. But in doing that, I would also document some of these build steps, because they're quite interesting, and I think some people struggle with some of them. But this one I'm filming here is just a complete oddity, really, the way the wheels attach. So you can see there, part D is basically it's a nylock nut, and it presses into the well, doesn't even press into it, presses against the plastic essentially, and I think it's mostly friction that holds it there. I had to redo mine because initially it was spinning in the hub, but by reseating it, it solved that problem. So that nylock nut there, item number D, that is what this screw goes into. So instead of having an axle and putting a bolt on it, the bolt's inside the axle, if you like, and the screw goes in. So it's kind of a little bit fiddly having a screw to secure your wheel, and in addition to putting that screw through, you need to make sure the inside of the wheel interfaces with that funky little pattern there, rather than say a hex, which you can get a hex wheel into a hex really fast, but this one you've got to take a bit more time to make sure it's definitely seated correctly, and then you have to screw that long screw into the wheel. So yeah, I thought that was quite a interesting way of solving the wheel mounting issue that I'd not seen before. Now there's an interesting bit here where this front bulkhead part needs to be trimmed to help clear the steering arm, or it says to clear the steering arm. So I didn't do that, and my steering seems to be fine, so like when I was assembling it I couldn't see that it was going to interfere at all, so I didn't bother doing that. But yeah, it's in the instructions there. I thought it's quite interesting why they wouldn't just have the part that fits from the factory instead of making you trim it. That's just the information for the shock towers. So yeah, what else have we got in here? These here, right hand left hand thread, yet for the turnbuckles. I honestly don't know whether the turnbuckles are all supposed to face the same way or face different ways. So you can see there's a smooth side, and I have all my smooth sides facing inwards. But I'm not sure if that looked the nicest to me as far as a shelf queen goes, but I don't know if that's the way you're supposed to do them, or you're supposed to have them opposing. I'm not too sure. I can't get my head around that. It's I guess for racing it's best if you turn the turnbuckle the same direction for the same result on each side, but anyway. Now here's a really weird bit. I've seen some people on YouTube lose their minds trying to figure this out, but you've got this funky spring that you push through the servo horn, and then this step here is people just go, whoa, what's going on here? So yeah, that's one of the things I'd like to demonstrate. I do it with pliers, and what I do is I grab the top here with the pliers, and if you twist it, the spring will kind of, I don't know, sort of double over on itself. It's quite a funky thing to see. And then you can push it onto the horn and it will stay there, sort of coiled under pressure. You're best to keep your finger on it until you actually get it mounted on the servo so it doesn't shoot off. But yeah, the idea is that spring is sort of coiled and it's under pressure, so that when you turn the wheels, it has some give in the servo. I probably can't show you one-handed, but if you're racing the car and the wheels had a jut, it's not going to sort of feed back to the servo, it's just going to be absorbed by that spring. It's just another interesting take on a servo saver, and Schumacher has some pretty interesting and cool takes on some of these things that you think were quite standard, but on building this kit you learn that there's other creative ways to achieve those tasks. So I just got to quickly stop at the ball diff just to pay tribute to Cecil Schumacher, who's been credited with creating the ball diff. So that's what's used here. Interestingly, in this step, there's a glue step where you have to clean up the washer, and I gave it a light sanding. Actually, sorry, the plastic part has a light sanding just to give that glue something to bite to. But yeah, gluing parts together and inside gearboxes is I thought was quite interesting. Right, here's another big one. These universal joints. These again are a sort of every person that builds this kit will comment on these because they're hilarious. They're a bit of a challenge to start with, but once you pick up the technique, they're actually fairly simple. I think the biggest tip is in this first step. So when you get the little metal universal, which I think they call it's gone right out of my head, a crucible, I think Schumacher calls it. The idea is to sort of push it in like that on an angle and get this little bit that sticks out, the little, I don't know, spike bit. I would rock this back and forth with my fingers and try and get that little spike as far into that hole as possible. And what you'll find is if you get it all the way in, you'll be basically resting right on the curve of the crucible. And if you're right on the curve of it, it's only a little bit of a push with this thing to get it over that and sort of to here. And then once you've got it to there, you can get in with this, and it's basically sort of the first push spreads the coupling, and the second push will sort of click it through the hole. And they've tried their best to illustrate that here. But I think there's no point trying to push it in with this tool unless it's fully seated in that hole. Because it's just not going to work if it's not fully seated down. And that's the kind of thing I see people struggling with the most, is trying to push it in when it's not ready. I would say at that step it should be even further than that. This upright should be basically sitting, like the spike should be sitting on the upright, if you know what I mean. So it's past the hump of this bit here. So once you get it that far, it's quite easy. It's quite hard on the fingers, but once you sort of get practiced with it, it's not too bad. And there's quite a lot of these to do. There's like, what do you got? You sort of got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think you have to go through it about eight steps, because you have one half and then you have the other half of this. So you've got a half at the what do you call it, at the diff, and then you slot another half over, and then you've got another one at the end. Oh, actually, sorry, this shows both ends connected, so you're basically repeating this process twice there and twice there. I don't think there's any. Oh, they're at the ends as well. They're at the ends too. So yeah, I was right the first time. It's like 8, I think. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, so yeah, you have sore fingers by the time you're done with those. Here's just a little diagram of the the belt. I think I might have said there was 2 belts, but there's just one. And it talks here as well about torquing the belt. I didn't really follow this step because my car's just going on the shelf, but there's a process for tightening the belt, and to be completely honest, I don't think I 100% understand how it's sort of tightening the belt. But anyway, it's there in the instructions. Just the other thing I wanted to show, yeah, here's the outer one of these, so you're going through it again in this stage. Nice exploded view here of the car, that's very cool. Okay, so the shock absorbers, there's two things on these shocks that you need to know about. So the first is, I don't understand what this diagram's supposed to be telling me. Note which way round the circlip fits, rounded edge in first. So I could not figure out what the rounded edge was, what they were referring to there. I think this is the clip in question here. So yeah, I don't get that. Mine went together fine and they seem fine, so I'm still not sure what this is trying to tell me. The other thing is, if which is kind of a big one, if you want to build this kit, you really are going to need some RC sized circlip pliers. So in order to get this circlip in, you're going to need to squeeze it, and that's another picture of it there. So yeah, and you can see where it locates here, and the basically holds the internals of the shock absorber together. But yeah, I tried a few different methods, but I ended up ordering the pliers from Schumacher in order to finish building the shocks, because I just couldn't see any way that I was going to be able to build them without some circlip pliers. Pardon me, that circlip is quite strong, and it's, even with the pliers you can feel it's under a lot of tension to recess it into the shock body. So guys, I think just the last thing I wanted to touch on was this thing here, part D. You need to use some pliers to push it into the lower shock link support there, whatever you call it. It's this bit here. The camera's not going to want to focus too well. So yeah, it goes at the bottom of the shock there, and the screw passes through it. Yeah, so there's I guess, now that I think about it, there's 2 things to this. The first one was when trying to snap it into here, I actually crushed one of mine. This end here just all sort of disintegrated. So I had to order some replacements in order to finish this one. And the other thing about it was, when I went to fit it, is that you need to pass this quite long screw through it, which is fine, but once you've got so far in with the thread, the whole thing just spins inside the shock bottom there. So maybe there's some sort of tool where you can get in the back here and hold that bit there from spinning. But I couldn't find a tool that would fit in there from my collection, so I had to just hold a screwdriver hard up against it while I screwed it in. And by doing that, I managed to get the screws into the point where they're flush, which I think looks nice. But yeah, I can't say that I felt confident that those screws were all the way home. They come out the other side, and they go into the shock there, the the suspension arm, as you can see, but it's always more satisfying when you run out of thread, and I can't guarantee that I ran out of thread on these. I just had to get them in as far as I could with using a screwdriver to try and prevent it from spinning in there. So that was another little weird quirk I found, but yeah, all in all, a very satisfying build. I would definitely recommend the Schumacher Cougar Classic. I think for the price, it's quite incredible. The re-release Kyosho Ultimas are coming down in price now, the original re-release, where they're probably about 60 or 70 pounds dearer than this. But yeah, that's still quite a way to go. They'll probably keep coming down, but I think that just for comparative sake sort of shows you what a bargain this is. In my mind anyway. It's a lovely car, one that I'm going to hold on to. I've also really appreciated these tyres, and I've used these tyres on one of my other cars that you'll see, and that's just purely because I just really like the Schumacher tyres, and the tyres are quite a reasonable price as well. Like they're not too expensive at all. Particularly like the fronts with the just the two spikes. A lot of two-wheel drive front tyres are ribbed, which I'm not a huge fan of. I'm not sure if these will fit on vintage stuff due to, like I said, I'm pretty sure the wheels are physically larger than the vintage stuff, but the car that I used them on had the larger wheels, so that was all good. Anyway, this has gone on longer than I intended, and I probably rambled a bit, and thanks very much for watching, liking, subscribing. I really appreciate it, guys. Have a good one. Cheers. Hello. I got something a little bit different today. This is my Schumacher Cougar Classic, which is a re-release of the original Cougar. I knew absolutely nothing about Schumacher cars. Like, I had no experience of them at all, like through my childhood. I'd just never heard of them. They just never sort of had the reach to, you know, where I was at. It was all Tamiya with a little bit of Kyosho thrown in. But yeah, mostly Tamiya. You know, that was the price bracket that me and my friends could afford. Anyway, I decided to give a Schumacher kit a go, and I like the look of the Cougar Classic. I do, you know, I guess I have a preference for the two-wheel drive models of any brand. I don't know, I just like the look of the two-wheel drive buggies. So I decided to go with this. I think the price of these buggies is really competitive. Like, it'll vary, you know, from where you're based. Prices will vary, but just as an example, if I just go on eBay for a sec,